Chapter 2. Who were the Aftons? Solving the mystery of FNAF is like playing a Metroidvania, a game where the map is riddled with secrets and the keys and power-ups you need to find them. These games are non-linear and require frequent backtracking for every new tool you find, because the player has usually already passed several puzzles where they would have been useful without even realizing it. So, I hope you don't mind if my narration frequently jumps between different games and novels and times. It takes clues we find in FNAF 4 to fully understand FNAF 1, and I'm doing my best to assemble the clues in the right order for the fastest speedrun possible. FNAF hides a complex mystery under a simple costume. Most mysteries at least provide you with a list of questions to answer, and then it's an adventure game of finding which keys open which doors. But FNAF doesn't even give us the questions, challenging us to carefully observe each event and recognize mysteries that need solving on our own. For example, in Save Them, the puppet floats within arm's reach of the purple guy, yet neither character attacks the other even though they both have the power to do so. This is bizarre because the puppet contains remnant from Henry's daughter, the Take Cake victim, and the purple guy matches William Dave Afton's description from the Silver Eyes, who most of the fandom believes to be the Take Cake killer. You'd think the puppet would make a beeline towards her killer the moment she saw him, and William, fearing such revenge, would try to strike first to prevent it. Yet both characters pass each other peacefully in the minigame, and of all the robots in Save Them, Mangle and the puppet are the only two robots that William doesn't try to shut down. How can this be? The FNAF 1 5-child MCI poster talks of the suspect, presumably William, being convicted after being caught on camera entering the secret off-camera back room in a cartoon mascot suit, which perfectly matches the events seen in Foxy Go-Go, as Spring Bonnie, a company mascot, didn't appear in the Fredbear and Friends cartoon, where Foxy took his place beside Fredbear instead. But while we see Foxy enter the secret room 3 times in Go Go Go, Foxy gets an error message when he tries to follow Shadow Freddy into the secret room in FNAF 3, as his programming prevents him from entering. And then Purple Guy tears Foxy apart, leaving his robot parts scattered on the floor, showing there was no human body inside Foxy at the time. Here we see Foxy trying to enter 2 different secret rooms, but he's only able to enter one of them. And Foxy Go-Go does show the before and after of the MCI. Because the fates of the 5 children were never discovered, the MCI must have happened in the secret off-camera back room as described in the FNAF 1 poster. This location would have closed instantly if 5 child murders were caught on camera, yet it stayed open until the blood and mucus seeping from the robots caused health problems. So I do think Foxy Go-Go must show the 5 MCI kids before and after the attack, and not some other set of 5 children. But why could Foxy enter the secret room in Go Go Go, but not in FNAF 3? And for that matter, how was Shadow Freddy able to enter the secret room 4 times in FNAF 3 when the puppet is supposed to be the robot with the power to go anywhere? Which is how the puppet was able to enter the secret room and reach the MCI kids' bodies in the first place. FNAF's simple minigames inspire many complex questions. And whenever we see something that appears to be impossible happen, we need to ask ourselves, is this a lore inconsistency? Or is there something different about these 2 situations that made it possible for Foxy to enter the secret room? FNAF is the story of the Afton family. But in order to decode that story, we need to know who its characters are and how the family business worked. So uncovering the Afton family tree will be the focus in this chapter. In Chapter 1, we covered how the Aftons used mad science and Dr. Bose's theory of living metal to create the transforming spring suits. These robotic Iron Maidens were designed to poke the person wearing the suit with metal spring locks, so that the organic human and metal robot were both connected by several little bridges of living metal, fusing them both into one being. And since the robot was now part of the pilot's body, part of their soul would migrate into it, and remain in the robot after the spring locks were disengaged. By this method, a human could use their personal spring-suit animatronic as a sort of Horcrux, a backup copy of themselves that would live on even if their organic self died. And they could put their spring-suit back on now and then to reconnect with it and keep their backup up to date. For the more hardcore robot fans, the pilot could elect to die in the spring suit immediately, crushed with it as the spring locks failed, and the robot reverted to animatronic mode while they were still inside. Then all of their soul would go into the spring suit immediately, and they could upgrade into the form of a powerful, immortal android, by transferring most of the remnant back into an Endo-01 endoskeleton designed to mimic a human skeleton, then cover it with Terminator-style synthetic flesh, looking, to all but a skilled medical professional, to be the very same human they used to be. Charlie in the novels was a secret android like this, and other than the occasional superhuman feat, she seemed so real that even she thought she was a normal human. But Charlie had a problem. Immortal Afton androids did not age like normal humans, and the only way they could simulate growing up was by upgrading to larger android forms. This is why Charlie had her 4 closets, with Ella, her original robot form, behind the smallest door, and Baby, intended to be her adult form, behind the 4th. Charlie vaguely remembers Aunt Jen taking her back to Henry's house, which would have been when young Charlie of the 2nd closet got upgraded into Teen Charlie, the protagonist we know from the novels. This created a singular situation where several versions of Charlie existed at the same time, and Teen Charlie even had to fight Baby, her own adult version, in the fourth closet. The Aftons rarely scrapped their younger forms, but let them live on as different children using different names, or sometimes altering their appearance so they could pass as robots, like the ever-growing horde of balloon children we see throughout the games, living snapshots of who each person was at different stages in their life. Remnant is often equated with memories, the life experiences that make a person who they are. In FNAF AR, we see Remnant as whispering motes of light and darkness, traces of positive and negative memories lingering in a place that color it, like the aura of deja vu which haunted Freddy's in the Silver Eyes. Remnant is much more concentrated a living person, which is why the scooper from Sister Location was designed to harvest Remnant-infused living metal from robots who had devoured a victim on the surface, and then kept this haunted living metal heated to malleability so that it couldn't move and or escape. But like the dummy voice from Night 4 of Sister Location tells us, scooping Remnant out of a robot or person is like taking a scoop to a tub of ice cream. There's always some traces left in the tub afterwards, so there's always a bit of each person's remnant left in the old android when they upgrade to a new one, adopting different names and leading different lives, because memories are the life experiences that make people who they are, and shards of the same soul that possess different memories are bound to have different personalities as well. Being aware that each member of the Afton family has multiple versions of themselves, and that these differently named versions can be very different, or even as opposite from each other as Vanny and Vanessa, is an important Metroidvania key to understanding the story of the games, because Charlie is not the only Afton child who grew up like this. And whenever we find a character suffering from remnant drain, not remembering something they clearly should know, it could be a clue that they're a younger version of someone else. Now we need to establish some criteria for how to identify members of the Afton family when we see them. Criteria number 1. If someone has superhuman abilities, they're probably an Afton android. For example, in Help Wanted, Tape Girl tells us how Jeremy used a guillotine paper cutter to cut off his own face, dropped it on the floor like a discarded mask, then casually plugged himself back into the VR system to get back to work. His faceless visage gave Tape Girl a curious glance as she entered the room, even as blood continued to stream down his shirt. Any normal human who is not already dead from blood loss would be in a world of pain after something like this, and working would be the last thing on their mind. Yet Jeremy takes off his own face like a fashion accessory, as if flesh were just a sort of padding over a metal endoskeleton beneath. Jeremy must be an android, and a member of the Afton family. Criteria 2. Characters who know something only an Afton would know must be members of the family. On Night 5 of FNAF 2, Phone Guy tells Jeremy, our protagonist with a familiar name, that the building is on lockdown due to the investigation into the Save Them massacre, and nobody is able to get in or out, including, by logical extension, Jeremy himself. But on Night 6, Phone Guy is shocked and surprised to find that Jeremy is still there. He already sent Jeremy a memo that he should leave, even though leaving should be impossible. Or is it? Every Phasma location has an off-camera secret room that most robots are forbidden to enter on their own, which doesn't appear on the floor map. And while FNAF 1's secret room was revealed in the northeast corridor during FNAF 3, the location of FNAF 2's back room has never been officially released. Although, due east from Pirates Cove in FNAF 1 takes us to the massive central dining hall covered by 3 cameras. The MCI could not have happened here, since any murders would have been recorded and the fate of the children would have not been a mystery. Meanwhile, east from Kids Cove on the Save Them map, which was Pirates Cove before its family-friendly conversion, is a blank space where a secret room would fit perfectly and also be right next to the Puppets box so she could access it quickly and quietly. So there's at least one secret in FNAF 2 that's yet to be found. But it gets better. FNAF 2 is a restaurant without a kitchen. Look wherever you like. Every public room in FNAF 2 is on camera except the restrooms, and any restaurant seen hauling industrial quantities of pizza out of the toilets isn't likely to have return customers. In Help Wanted, Steelwall did an amazing job rendering places that no casual gamer would ever see. Yet even boundary-breaking freewalkers still couldn't locate the kitchen in either FNAF 1 or FNAF 2. But there is a kitchen. We visited it when we repaired Chica, so there must be a way to get that pizza and its crust of crunchy roach chitin into the dining halls. Using Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's principle that, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. If there's no public and obvious access to the kitchen in FNAF 2, then it must be connected by a secret passage. The Mango's Quest minigame shows Mango leaving a room with 3 clouds in it, the stage of FNAF 1, to enter a house with windows like the ones we see in FNAF 4's Afton house. And FNAF 4 shows us that Fredbear's used to be right next to the house too. The mysterious kitchen used by both restaurants was likely the one in the Afton house itself. So any employee who had access to the pizza supply would also have access to the Afton house. Would the Aftons trust random employees with a secret of how to get into their house? Not likely, since they've gone to such great lengths to hide the passage. And a secret only stays a secret until one person reveals it. But somehow, nobody ever revealed these bizarre, suspicious secret passages to the police, even in the wake of a multiple child murder investigation. Which forces me to make an improbable, yet unavoidable, conclusion. That all of the employees at Freddy's and Fredbear's were members of the Afton family, since only they would keep a secret under such pressure. William Afton, the CEO of Afton Robotics, was working as the guard on duty when Save Them happened the week before Jeremy's shift. And while such dangerous minimum wage work seems far below William's pay grade, he does set the precedent of Afton family members working as employees at Freddy's. So, when Phone Guy was surprised to find Jeremy hadn't obeyed his memo and left, it was because Phone Guy knew that Jeremy could leave. Which also means Phone Guy knew a way to get in and out of this place too. So Freddy-loving Jeremy and Foxy-loving Phone Guy must both be members of the Afton family. The third guard on duty after William and Jeremy was Fritz Smith, a temp worker who somehow entered this lockdown, now closed building under his own power and possessed the same rarefied technician knowledge Mike Schmidt had for adjusting the robots for a custom night, and even got fired for the very same reasons, tampering with the robots and odor. Phone Guy said offhandedly that there was only one technician to look after the retired classic suits in the FNAF 3 phone calls. He said the classic animatronics would be looked at by our technician.
Which is why the classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location while being looked at by our technician.
Revealing that Freddy's only had one technician on the staff at the time. Yet somehow, Fritz Smith and Mike Schmidt, each with hybrid English-German names, both possessed the rare knowledge of this single technician. This supports the idea that Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith were the same person using two fake names to get rehired by Fazbear Entertainment, and twice took the job that William Afton had in the Silver Eyes. So whoever Fritz Smith turns out to be, they must also be a member of the Afton family. Criteria number 3. A character is a member of the Afton family if other family members say that they are. FNAF 6 revealed that Henry, a major character from the first novel trilogy that left a huge impact on the story despite being dead, was very much alive in the mirror universe world of the games as the CEO of the morally challenged corporation Fazbear Entertainment, and that Henry's company now controlled the original restaurant where Take Cake to the Children once happened, while Scraptrap, a version of William, was clawing at the walls for months trying to get inside. Henry's Fazbear Entertainment and William's Afton Robotics had been working together since at least the beginning of Fredbear's Family Diner around 1982, where both men appeared on stage in their respective golden suits. Together, both companies formed the Fear Partnership, which lasted from Fredbear's to the foreseeable future. William might have spent 30 years in prison in Springtrap, but that doesn't mean another Afton couldn't run Afton Robotics in his absence. Was the FEAR partnership of the games as tight-knit and friendly as the Fear of the books? We'll have to see. But for this chapter, the important detail is how Henry and the other characters address each other. Elizabeth, who was eaten by a baby, was the daughter of William Afton. She calls him Daddy in the child memories from Sister Location. And after Scrap Baby rebuilt herself after being ejected from Ennard, she traveled to FNAF 6 and called the person she thought was William Daddy again. Yet in Sister Location, Elizabeth calls Ballora by her proper name instead of Mommy. She treats Ballora as a person of respect, but not as her own mother, which, by extension, would also mean that Ballora wasn't William's wife. Meanwhile, Henry refers to Elizabeth by proper name, while calling the entity created when Lefty and the puppet fused together, my daughter, cementing that the victim of Take Cake to the Children was the game world's version of Charlie. While people talk a lot about William Afton and his son Michael, I believe the story of FNAF 1 through 4 actually centers around Charlie/Charlotte. In both the novels and games, Charlie is the very first grind child murder victim, a young girl whose life was cut short, seemingly without rhyme or reason. The details of her murder differ each universe. In the novels, William abducts her in the quiet backroom of Fredbear's, while in the games she's stabbed in the street outside the original restaurant by the mysterious Magenta Man. But in both worlds, her death changes everything for the family, and the end of her life as a mortal human is only the beginning of her story as an android family member. In the novels, her abduction caused the immediate closure of Fredbear's, while in the games her stabbing dealt a slow yet mortal wound to the original restaurant, turning it into the struggling restaurant seen in the FNAF 1 posters, clinging to life for years after its bad incident while searching for a second company to financially rescue them. A struggling restaurant that existed years before the Fear 2-company partnership. While the FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator expanded this scene with a security puppet minigame, it also made clear the original Take Cake scene was still important to the story. For some strange reason, an entire party of children turned a deaf ear to the crying little girl outside, including Freddy, who you'd think would want customers to come in. The other children did know who Charlie was. When the crying child attacks in FNAF World, she changes green and blue, just like every other child at the party. And not only did the party kids see Charlie's face outside the window, they even buried the security puppet under boxes to make certain it couldn't help her. Preventing Charlie from leaving the party was the marionette's single function. This was not a random act of cruelty, nor a case of mistaken identity. While everyone remembers the Take Cake murder, few recall that the Magenta Man's attack was only the second crime that happened that day. And if Kid-Sized Freddy and the party kids hadn't deliberately shunned Charlie, that second crime would never have happened. So I believe the question of why members of the Afton family would shun one of their own is critical to solving the mystery of FNAF, as this first crime sets so many other events in motion. Acts of evil have a way of feeding off each other, with each instance of revenge growing more intense than the last. And so this cruel childish prank not only escalated to one murder, but several more to come. I have a theory why Charlie's shunning happened, but we'll need to delve deeper into the Metroidvania before it will make sense. There was evidence that Charlie was in the story before FNAF 6. If you venture off the beaten path in FNAF 4, you'll run into a girl surrounded by miniature toy animatronics like the ones Henry made for his daughter in the novels. This girl with a red bow tie and huge semicircular smile is wearing a purple Spectrum shirt and jeans, the outfit Charlie said she always wore near the start of the Silver Eyes. The exact shade of Toy Park Girl's shirt is magenta, purple with an extra touch of red. This is doubled down on in the Silver Eyes graphic novel, where we see a photo of Charlie's nuclear family where both she and her mother are wearing magenta outfits. Magenta seems to be an important color to Henry's side of the family. A nuclear family has 4 members, a father, a mother, 1 sister, and 1 brother. We have Charlie and her father Henry in the family tree now, but where are her mother and brother? In the novel universe, Charlie had a twin brother named Sammy. They were inseparable, and always went everywhere together. But although they looked very similar, they are also opposite in some ways. Charlie was a big fan of the robots, and loved to watch the bird-like twitching motions whenever a robot was in control inside the costumes. She had her heart set on bonding with Chica. Sammy, though, preferred the smooth motions of humans controlling the costumes, and did not share Charlie's love of robots. This is likely why Game Sammy didn't follow Charlie to the birthday gathering the night of Take Cake to the Children, where Banny had been reserved for him. The thought of deliberately letting the spring locks cut deep into his flesh to become one with the robot probably frightened him. While Sammy's name is all over the first novel trilogy, we never overtly meet Sammy in the books. Can we be sure that Sammy shows up in the games at all? Yes, because Toy Park Girl also has a twin brother. Outside of Fredbear's in FNAF 4, we bump into Plushtrap Kid, who's carrying a toy version of Spring Bonnie. Although, this toy is Springtrap Green for some reason, as if an addition of blue had corrupted the existing yellow. Plushtrap Kid tells the crying child that his father warned him about putting his fingers in Spring Bonnie, because it was a finger trap. Much in the way novel Henry told the twins not to put their fingers into any of the animal costumes, because many contained spring locks that could snap off their noses. And both Plushtrap Kid and Toy Park Girl share not only similar shapes, but several perfect numerical color matches when compared in Photoshop, suggesting that these two children are not only siblings, but twins. And if Toy Park Girl is the game's equivalent of Charlie, then Plushtrap Kid would be her brother, Sammy. Some names do change when going between the novel and game worlds. Michael Brooks and Michael Afton both seem to be Golden Freddy, for example. So the Sammy and Charlie of one world might well be the Gabriel and Cassidy of the other. Also note that different versions of the same person often have different names within the same universe, like our friends Jeremy and Michael, perhaps. However, since the names from the novels are much better known, I'll be using those names to refer to their game world counterparts in cases where canon names have not been confirmed. As we covered earlier, once human Afton children are converted into immortal androids, the only way they can grow up, so to speak, is to transfer most of the remnant into a new, larger android form, leaving a fraction of themselves behind in their previous shell, which continues to live on. So if Charlie had 4 versions of herself in the novels, we should expect to see multiple versions of her brother in the games, too. And we do. If you look at Balloon Boy's appearance from FNAF 2, then compare it side by side with the sprite from Air Adventure, they're easily the same character, just with a few small differences, like his balloon turning purple. Now, if you add Balloon Boy's appearance in FNAF 4 to this lineup, he still has the purple balloon, but now looks more like a real child than a robot. And to complete this evolution of Balloon Boy progression, if you place the Bonnie Bully at the end, he looks very much like an older teen version of the 3rd frame. A little, fake-looking robot turning into what looks like a very human teenager by the end. Now compare Plush Trap Kid to the third frame of Balloon Boy's evolution, and you'll find these two also share several uncanny matches. They both have the same dark blue eyes, dark brown hair, and blood-colored red accent. These two are similar to each other, but not the same, as B-Boy has a red shirt versus Plush Trap Kid's green one, and BB's appearance has lighter tones versus Plush Trap Kid's darker ones. Balloon Boy and Plush Trap Kid are both android versions of Sammy, yet, as different fragments of a person have different sets of their memories, they can have different personalities as well. And it just so happens that BB has his own secret twin named JJ, who looks like him in most respects except for color, where she has translucent magenta cheek dots versus BB's opaque red ones. These magenta cheeks are also seen on the cover of the Fazbear Frights novel 1:35 AM, belonging to Ella, the robot doll who was Charlie's original first closet form from the novels. And sure enough, both the Freddy Files and the Silver Eyes graphic novel confirm that Ella has the same magenta cheek dots that JJ does. Names between universes might change even if the character is the same, but I do believe that JJ is the version of Ella in the game world, and plays the same role as Charlie's original android form when she was a little kid. So when we tie BB and JJ together as twins, just like Toy Park Girl and Plush Trap Kid are, then connect Balloon Boy and Plush Trap Kid together, we see two different versions of the twins from two different places in time. And if Sammy had a further teen evolution who became the Banny bully, then it stands to reason that there is also a teen version of Charlie as well, still keeping close to her brother whenever she can. So, if someone was able to convince Sammy to try out one of the new golden suits, you can be sure that Charlie would be in that back room with him, trying on the other one. Now that we've discovered Plush Trap Kid with his green shirt as a version of Sammy, we have the Metroidvania power-up we need to identify Sammy in other places where he appears. And immediately, we find a child picture in FNAF 1, where a green-shirted kid is posing next to a birthday present, where a bluish Bonnie, of all animatronics, is popping out. The word me in the frame sits right between the two, as if that single pronoun applied to them both. A fat kid with a green shirt is chasing around Mangle in Mangle's quest, trying to tear them apart, which transitions neatly into another child drawing in FNAF 2, where green-shirted Sammy is one of the Mangle Marauders, a group of 3 boys tearing apart Mangle together. The second Marauder has the same purple shirt and blue pants that Michael Afton has in the sister location custom night scenes. And the third Marauder, showing the same amazing android strength the other toddlers have for tearing apart a huge metal robot with their bare hands, is a mysterious kid with an orange shirt. In FNAF 3, we see Sammy once again posing with Bonnie, while Bonnie holds a cupcake with a single candle, while little Sammy seems to have a single curl of hair. This drawing has a twin picture connected to it, showing what looks like a creepy Freddy standing in the middle of a park surrounded by 3 tiny figures, Toy Park Girl style. And at the right side of the FNAF 3 office, we see a similar looking boy and girl, who might be a pair of twins, cheering as Chica pops out of a birthday cake, with her orange beak complementing the orange icing around her. Going back to FNAF 1, there's an image of a nuclear family where the mother and father wear a set of blue and green that closely matches Sammy's shirt and pants in the Me poster next to it. And the little boy of the family has the same single curl of hair we saw Sammy have in the FNAF 3 poster, while the father holds their mischievous little girl by the ear. So Sammy is definitely in the story of the games as part of Henry's nuclear family, and Sammy's personal character is Bonnie. He has a Spring Bunny toy, 2 child pictures where he poses with Bonnie, and evolves into the Bonnie Bully in FNAF 4. And in future chapters, we'll learn how he's also connected to another version of Bonnie. But now it's time to locate the last member of Henry's nuclear family, their mother. Since there are 2 fathers in the extended Afton family, Henry and William, and each has a daughter of their own, Charlie and Elizabeth, it stands to reason that we should also find 2 mothers as well. And when looking for adult female characters in FNAF that might be mothers, the first one we find is Ballora. And in sister location, Ballora even seems to give birth right in front of our eyes. Moments after she's scooped, and a shower of her fragmented living metal falls to the ground, an odd thing to happen since the scooper is supposed to collect all of that, the previously empty and silent room is suddenly teeming with a horde of mini-Renas. The scooper blueprint says that collected remnant-infused living metal should be kept heated and malleable, because only then is no movement detected, which suggests the disturbing scenario that when it isn't heated, it does move, like how Molten Freddy lifts itself off the table with arms made of nothing but exposed living metal cables. How did the mini-Renas find masks so quickly? They must have grown them. No children's entertainment company designed Molten Freddy's amalgamated visage, which is why that mask blueprint has no corporate signature. Molten Freddy must have grown this mask themselves to express their new identity. And if this living metal construct could regrow its own casing, perhaps this is how Michael Afton regrew his Terminator flesh overcoat after these same mini-Renas tore it off him from within on night 5, restoring his human functionality so he could eat popcorn again as Ender joined him to watch television. Michael could totally chop off his own face and not worry about it. And once detached from his body, that severed face of synthetic flesh might have reverted to a hard plastic shell, just like the flesh the balloon children have. Another indication that the mini-Renas who attacked Michael were Ballora's children is that they all resemble her, like little ballerinas to Ballora's big ballerina. In the same way the Biddy-Babs are each little babies that resemble their mother, the Big Baby. Remnant seems to do for living metal what DNA does for living flesh. Life continues, regardless of what media it's in. So why is it important to establish that the mini-Renas are Ballora's children? Because the mini-Renas also resemble another character, the Puppet. Viewed side by side, the similarity in their faces and heads is remarkable. And while Baby's Biddy-Babs share her mostly light-colored theme, the mini-Renas share the Puppet's blend of light and darkness. Since part of the remnant of Henry's daughter went into the Puppet, if Ballora is the mother of puppets, this suggests she is Charlie's mother and Henry's wife. Going back to Criteria 3, we know that Elizabeth is William's daughter because she calls him Daddy when speaking to him. However, on night 5 of Sister Location, Elizabeth calls Ballora by her proper name, not Mommy, suggesting that while Elizabeth respects Ballora as an adult, Ballora is not her mother. At the end of FNAF 6, Elizabeth, now in Scrap Baby, again calls the man she believes to be William Daddy. But once Henry reveals himself as the mastermind who called everyone here instead of William, Henry calls Elizabeth by her proper name, showing that Elizabeth isn't his daughter. And then Henry turns and calls the entity that formed when Lefty the Shadowy Bear captured and fused with the puppet, my daughter, confirming that some of Charlie's remnant did indeed end up in the Puppet, and that Henry is still her father in this universe. All of which again points to Ballora being Charlie's mother, not Elizabeth's, and suggests that Ballora is Henry's wife rather than William's. We also find a half-human, half-robot bust of a woman with eyes and earrings very similar to Ballora's on the opposite side of the Sister Location hub room, right across from 3 disembodied doll faces who look for all the world like Charlie's dorm room project from the Twisted Ones, the little doll faces that would talk to each other. And lo and behold, this half-robot bust has a solid magenta base, the color once again linked to Henry's side of the family. And we later learn in FNAF 6 and Help Wanted that Hand Unit, our favorite unreliable narrator after Phone Guy, is a mascot of Henry's company Fazbear Entertainment, the company that definitely controls the Sister Location facility. It makes perfect sense that a location controlled by Henry would have mementos from his family in it. And that William doesn't control this location because he just spent the last 30 years in prison in Springtrap. And the first thing William did after finally breaking free was ask his son Michael to sneak in and risk life and limb to rescue the other family members from this horrible place, something the CEO of the company could do with a stroke of a pen. So finally, we've completed Henry's nuclear family in the games, and proven that the human who became the robot Ballora is Sammy and Charlie's mother. But Henry's nuclear family is only part of the Afton family tree, and one thing a nuclear family doesn't have is space for 2 brothers. But FNAF 4 reveals that somewhere there is a set of 2 brothers, older brother Foxy Bully and younger brother Crying Child, the bite victim. And since Sammy becomes the Bonnie Bully, he's neither Foxy Bro nor Crying Child, so he isn't one of the brothers. But could Sammy reveal who they are? When Sammy/Plushtrap Kid talks to CC, he says, "My daddy says," in third person, which tells us that the Crying Child isn't Sammy's father, as otherwise Sammy would have said, "You say," instead, so CC cannot be Henry. But Plushtrap Kid and the Crying Child are related. They share a family quirk, a cowlick of hair almost dangling into their eyes, although each boy's cowlick is slanting in the opposite direction, suggesting they are related, but not closely. At first glance it seems like these 2 characters are the only ones that have that sort of slash mark in their foreheads, but if you explore FNAF 4 closely, you'll discover there's one more. Nightmare Foxy also has a suggestion of a cowlick slash in his forehead, and it's leaning in exactly the same direction as Sammy's, suggesting a close relation this time. So, if we find the family member who uses Foxy as their avatar character, we're likely to find both Sammy's father and the older brother Foxy Bully. And if we figure out who the bite victim is, we'll also know the identity of CC, the younger brother. So these are the Metroidvania power-ups we need to find next. While reading the FNAF Survival Logbook, I noticed something interesting. The cast lineup for this book seems identical to the lineup of FNAF 2. First, we have Phone Guy as the head of security, who admits Foxy is his favorite character, which explains why the logbook, designed and published by Fazbear Entertainment's head of security for Freddy's, has so many beautiful, gratuitous full-page shots of Foxy to the point of marginalizing the rest of the cast. Which is even more startling because Foxy himself isn't in the Freddy's logo that stars Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. Foxy even mimics some of Phone Guy's lines from FNAF 2 in the logbook, like, "What are you still doing here?" Foxy is Phone Guy's Horcrux animatronic, animated by some of his own remnant, and his love for Foxy is really narcissistic love for himself. And as we covered before, Phone Guy's knowledge of the secret entrances and exits to FNAF 2 mark him as a member of the Afton family. This survival logbook was published for the security guards at Freddy's, and the first guard to get the logbook wrote the name Mike on the first page, which the second guard crossed out. As I covered in the Color Brothers years ago, Mike Schmidt, who has the same rarefied technician knowledge of animatronic workings that Fritz Smith had, and got fired for the same reasons, is a pseudonym of William Afton's, another fake name William needed to get around Fazbear Entertainment's ban on rehiring previous employees, especially those with persona non grata. Fritz also knew how to enter and leave the lockdown FNAF 2 building, marking him as a member of the Afton family, taking the position that William himself had occupied only a week before. And the name Fritz Smith could roughly translate to the maker of Freddy, although we'll cover this more in the next chapter. Why is this important? Because the first guard to use the survival logbook that Phone Guy published knew who the second guard user would be in advance, and all throughout the logbook they left nearly erased questions directly aimed at the second guard. Most eerily, questions about his childhood memories and favorite toys when he was young. Personal questions that imply that the first guard knew the second one very, very well, but are curious how much the second guard still remembers of things that they shouldn't have forgotten. It almost sounds like these were memories that William himself once had, and that he wonders if the second guard still possesses, as if some of the second guard's remnant had once belonged to him. The second owner of the logbook writes and illustrates in bright red ink, and is also likely the one who tried to erase most of the first guard's scrawled questions. And the very first thing the second guard did when they received the logbook was cross out the name Mike at the beginning of the book, but for some reason never bothered to replace it. Michael Afton famously followed in his father's footsteps in Sister Location, and his appearance matched William's own so closely that the Biddy-Babs wondered if their new friend hiding behind the shield under the desk was the same one who had visited them before. Funtime Freddy seemed to identify Michael as the birthday boy, and even entered, the amalgamation of all the family members, also believed that Michael was a return of William. Michael even looked a lot like William's Save Them sprite once his synthetic flesh malfunctioned, and he turned into a skeletal purple zombie with glowing eyes, with only his blue pants to set him apart. It seems that Vlad's purple and blue vampire son really did resemble his father in a number of unique ways, making Vlad's claim that the baby didn't belong to him that much more comical. Going deeper, Michael and William even seem to have the same type of android endoskeleton, although Michael's reflection in Ennard's mask and William's face behind Springtrap's mask have opposite eyes lit. And then, William scrawls a bombshell into the logbook for the second guard to read. The party was for you. The very sort of party where younger brother crying child became the bite victim in FNAF 4. And also the sort of party that Jeremy Fitzgerald, the second guard in FNAF 2, left the night shift to cover after night 6, and didn't return from. The second logbook guard does remember FNAF 4. He draws a picture of Nightmare Fredbear, showing our second guard was the Bite of 87 victim himself. Now, it's time to answer an ancient FNAF question. Who was the Bite of 87 victim? Because once we have that answer, we'll know who the second owner of the logbook was. And there's only one person it could logically be. There was only one Fazbear restaurant open in the area in 1987, Phone Guy's location, the new and improved Freddy's of FNAF 2. The new Freddy's did once have a sister location back when Phone Guy recorded his FNAF 3 tapes. With Fredbear and Friends airing in 1983, Fredbear's Family Diner was certainly open then, which is also the year the Fazbear coins from Help Wanted give us for when Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was first established, back before Pirates Cove was remodeled into Kids Cove during its second opening in November 1987, and that version of Foxy was converted into Mangle, and back before the MCI animatronics, which had seemed new and healthy until the blood and mucus started to leak from them, degraded into the withered animatronics over the passage of years. But by November 1987, Fredbear's was only a memory, having now been closed for years, leaving the second opening of the new Freddy's in 1987 as the only remaining restaurant in the area. And because of this, the only place and time where the Bite of 87 could have happened. Somewhere in the 2 weeks FNAF 2 was open, starting with William's first week where the Save Them massacre happened, and ending after Fritz's shift on night 7 after the official closure of the restaurant was announced in the newspaper beside Jeremy's check, which also confirmed that the place had only been open for a few short weeks in total. Someone was bitten. And while the victim's identity was never officially released, we have plenty of evidence about who it could not have been. First, the bite shown in FNAF 4 involved only a single victim. This is different from the MCI back in 1983, where Golden Freddy, the Bite of 83 victim, was one of the 5 kids. There is both a Bite of 83 victim and a Bite of 87 victim in the FNAF timeline. As the Bite of 87 was a solo kill event, it did not happen during the Save Them massacre the week before. It's the investigation into the Save Them massacre that caused a lockdown that descended around FNAF 2 during Jeremy's week, not an investigation into the Bite of 87. In fact, Phone Guy doesn't say anything about this legendary bite in all of FNAF 2. And he does learn the details of the Save Them massacre by night 6, where a spare yellow suit was somehow involved in the death of 6 victims, judging from the 6 pools of blood left behind. Someone had used the yellow suit, and now, none of them are working right! The Fazbear Fright story Into the Pit seems to be a reference to this. Phone Guy had said earlier that the withered animatronics shouldn't have been able to move about on their own, as many of their parts, and presumably most of the remnant, had been put into the toys, which explains how the new toys inherited the flashlight vulnerability issue possessed by the older models. And Phone Guy was also surprised that while the toys were nice to all the children, they tended to stare untrustingly at adults and were overtly hostile toward the staff. Somehow, the Save Them massacre caused all of these things to change, in both the reanimation of the withered animatronics and the new staff hostility in the toys. It does seem like the remnant from the Save Them victims were put into the robots. But again, none of this involved a bite. And since the robots were only hostile towards the staff, this suggests a staff member was attacked. And since Phone Guy said nothing about the bite before night 6, the bite must have happened after his last phone call, which leaves day 7 and its infamous birthday party as the only available time window open where the Bite of 87 could have happened, at a time when the restaurant was already temporarily closed and locked down to prevent outside access from anyone who wasn't a member of the Afton family. And since only Aftons would know about the secret access to the pizza kitchen in their house, and this secret was never revealed, all the employees would have to be members of the Afton family too. Now, there are only 4 seemingly human characters we learn about in FNAF 2. William Afton as the first night guard, Phone Guy as the head of security, Jeremy Fitzgerald as the second night guard, and Fritz Smith as the improbable temp worker, with technician skills who comes in on night 7 after Jeremy has followed in William's footsteps by also getting a transfer to the day shift. As I mentioned earlier, I think Fritz Smith is actually a fake name used by William, but whether this is true or not, we still know that Fritz survives FNAF 2 due to his pink slip. Phone Guy survives FNAF 2 long enough to get eaten in the FNAF 1 Night 4 phone call, where all the animatronics attack him, ending with Yellow Bear's unique roar. And William survives FNAF 2 to become the night guard Mike Schmidt in FNAF 1, then gets springtrapped sometime after. So the only named staff member we know about, whose fate isn't accounted for elsewhere in the timeline, is Jeremy, our last candidate for the Bite of 87 victim. And the circumstances of Jeremy's transfer to the day shift birthday party are definitely sus. Jeremy is sent to this birthday party, and Fredbear's winning jaws, by foxy-loving Phone Guy, who, due to his position of higher authority, seems to be an older member of the family than Jeremy. Phone Guy, who normally doesn't let small things like employee spring lock failures get him down, seems unusually anxious on night 6. First genuinely mad that Jeremy hasn't left the restaurant, then he seems to cringe slightly as, in a nervous voice, he orders Jeremy to wear his uniform at the party, full well knowing that the animatronics hate staff members, and to stand as close as possible to the hostile robots as he can. Phone Guy seems fully aware that this is a bad idea, and seems to be giving this order under some duress, but give it, he does. And then, Jeremy disappears. Phone Guy's touch of guilt at sending Jeremy to Fredbear seems echoed in the remorse of older brother Foxy in FNAF 4, as he tries to apologize to his bitten younger brother after the fact. Because whether or not Phone Guy intended his younger brother to get hurt, Phone Guy was the one who delivered his younger brother Jeremy to Fredbear that day. And Jeremy is the only one who could have logically been the Bite of 87 victim. So, we have the cast lineup from FNAF 2 and the cast lineup from the Survival Logbook both mirroring each other. In both cases, Phone Guy is the head of security. In both cases, William Afton is the first guard. And again, in both cases, the second guard is Jeremy, the bite victim. But is Jeremy really his name? The second guard makes another doodle in the logbook of the exotic butters from Sister Location, something that Eggs Benedict, our fake name protagonist in Sister Location, would have known about and experienced. And we later learn that the real name of Eggs Benedict was Michael Afton. So why did Jeremy, quote-unquote, cross out the name Mike at the beginning of the survival logbook, but never replaced it with any other name? Because the real name of the second guard, the Bite of 87 victim, and our protagonist in not only Sister Location, but FNAF 2 as well, was William's younger son, Michael Afton. And just like Jeremy, who spent all of FNAF 2 dressing up as Freddy and dreaming of being the endoskeleton inside Freddy on the stage of FNAF 1, Michael's personal character is also Freddy. Because when asked to redraw the Freddy's logo, which had the faces of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica on it, Michael selfishly remakes the logo to show only Freddy's face. Michael's love toward Freddy is based on narcissism, just like how his older brother Phone Guy's love of Foxy is also a form of self-love. Freddy and Foxy do not seem to be on the best of terms. We can see the two arguing with each other in the survival logbook, in what looks like the FNAF 3 office before it became the rundown wreck we see in Fazbear's Fright, animatronics acting for all the world like they were real people. Withered Foxy is the only character in FNAF 2 besides the puppet who can attack Jeremy even with the Freddy head on. And it seems odd in the story of Lonely Freddy that a version of Foxy would be the ringmaster and top prize at Freddy's, while an army of kid-sized Freddy Fazbears, the erstwhile main character of the restaurant, are treated no better than disposable slaves. The Ultimate Custom Night anime, Barrow Vengeance, sheds some light on this situation. In it, Foxy has captured Freddy's dojo like the pirate he is, and Freddy wants it back. This dojo must be the FNAF 2 restaurant, since Mangle is there, and Mangle was only physically active during the second opening of FNAF 2 in 1987. And the new and improved Freddy's of FNAF 2 also fit seamlessly in with the dynamic between Jeremy/Michael and Phone Guy. Here's Freddy-loving Michael, our second night guard, having to look up to and work under his superior, quote-unquote, Foxy-loving Phone Guy, who assures him that now that Fazbear Entertainment is in control of the operation, the new management is making several changes over how things were done at that old, regrettable, original restaurant where Michael used to be the star, like allowing the animatronics to free roam during business hours. It only makes sense. Why create such amazing robots with autonomous moving and thinking ability 50 years ahead of their time and not let them show off for the audience unless someone was wearing them? Phone Guy's FNAF 3 calls, released for the general staff, all end with, "Remember to smile, you are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza," a message he sends to everyone except Michael, who literally has Freddy Fazbear's face. All of Phone Guy's messages in FNAF 2 were recorded specifically for Michael, and were all contemporary for him at the time they were made. One of several reasons that I believe the FNAF 2 Night 1 phone call was actually a replayed recording from summer 1983, when Fredbear's was open, and the old restaurant in question was the original place where Take Cake to the Children happened. So, Phone Guy refusing to call Freddy himself the face of the pizzeria while giving that title to everyone else definitely seems like a deliberate putdown. Interestingly, for all their anime talk of death and revenge, Foxy and Freddy seem to get along surprisingly well. Foxy always forgoes the chance to finish off his rival once and for all in favor of simply humiliating him. And Freddy, who never wins, always ends up strangely doing household chores for Foxy, including the cooking, which Foxy somehow feels safe eating. These two share more than just a bond of rivalry, they also seem to be living together in the same house. Foxy and Freddy are members of the same family, and Foxy also seems to be the stronger, older brother, which is inconsistent with the bite victim being Michael. Now, we have another family link to trace. If Phone Guy is Michael's older brother, and Michael is William Afton's son, then William must also be Phone Guy's father. And now the situation has gotten even weirder, because Phone Guy not only has his younger brother working under him, but his own father as well. And William does not seem happy with this arrangement. Even though he personally witnessed the Save Them massacre and knew full well that something terrible had happened, William assured Phone Guy in the background that everything was fine, and then bugged out before Night 5 to leave Phone Guy hanging high and dry as the murder investigation engulfed the new Freddy's and his improved management along with it. William also secretly returns to smash all the animatronics in FNAF 3 with Shadow Freddy's help, either to kill the kids all over again or to free their spirits from the robotic prisons. You decide. But either way, he's not doing Fazbear Entertainment a favor by breaking their robots. Phone Guy, and the company he works for, are definitely doing things differently than the original restaurant did. Because while the first restaurant lasted for years despite facing hardship, the new and improved Freddy's collapsed in complete disarray after only a few short weeks. While pirates might be good at stealing a ship, they're not always the best at sailing one. Which brings us to a FNAF question more ancient than the bite of 87. Who is Phone Guy, our beloved unreliable narrator and companion voice in the darkness over so many sleepless nights? Well, here's what we know. He's a fan of Fazbear Entertainment and continues to support that company over several locations no matter what goes wrong or what horrors he witnesses. He's an authority at Freddy's, but not the highest authority. Phone Guy didn't like the puppet or the redesign of Pirates Cove into Kids Cove, but still had to deal with both of those things anyway. Phone Guy is a huge fan of Foxy, or at least his version of Foxy. Phone Guy doesn't seem to mind when the toddlers/younger forms of the Afton children tear apart Mangle. That's someone else's version of Foxy, not his. Even though, unlike Freddy, Banny, and Chica, who seem to have a ton of replacement parts in FNAF 1, we never see replacement heads or parts for Foxy in FNAF 1 through 4, making versions of Foxy precious. Phone Guy tries to project authority, yet suffers from insecurities of his own. He does not know everything that happens at Freddy's or why, and often has to scramble to catch up, like finding replacement suits on short notice after the multiple spring lock failure incident. And very curiously, Phone Guy can barely seem to remember the name of Fredbear's Family Diner, even though it was the sister location opened beside the new Freddy's back in 1983. Even though Phone Guy seems to be a Fredbear fan, telling Michael/Freddy that you should be golden. Because that's what Fredbear is, a yellow Freddy Fazbear suit, according to the Silver Eyes, physically identical to Freddy himself in every way except color. Returning to the drawings Michael made in the Survivor logbook, we see him create fantasies of both locking up and blowing up a character who looks just like Freddy. Yet no self-respecting furry would ever treat their personal avatar like this. Since Michael only uses red ink, the color of this despised bear isn't immediately obvious, but Fredbear is the only target that makes sense. Recall that Fredbear is also teamed with Spring Bonnie, a version of Bonnie that needs the modifier Spring for some reason to distinguish it from the other robots. If Spring Bonnie was the original, you'd think it would simply be called Bonnie, while FNAF 1 Bonnie would instead be called Blue Bonnie. Toy Bonnie also needs a modifier, as he is also derivative of the original character. Fredbear is a golden mockery of Freddy, designed by Henry's company Fazbear Entertainment to appear better than Freddy. It's no wonder Michael, the real Freddy, hated having to spend time in Fredbear's temple to corporate greed, or the man in the Fredbear suit wouldn't let him leave in FNAF 4. Many details are flipped between the game universe and the earlier novels, but one aspect of the lore that stayed the same is that William is still linked to Spring Bonnie, and the man in the Fredbear suit can be none other than Henry, the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment himself. Henry, who seems to have a bone to pick with Michael, just like Phone Guy does. Well, Cassette Man and Phone Guy are different people. Or are they? Both characters work for Fazbear Entertainment in positions of authority. Both prefer to communicate with other members of the family through pre-recorded messages. Both are Fredbear sympathizers, and both carry a very special link to a certain pair of twins in the family. Henry was the father of Sammy and Charlie in the novels, and Toy Park Girl, the FNAF 4 sprite that I'm convinced belongs to the game world's version of Charlie, is wearing a purple Spectrum magenta shirt, just like her family photo in the graphic novel. Do you remember that cowlick that both Sammy and Michael shared, showing they were related, but distantly as the cowlicks leaned in different directions? The third cowlick, the one that matches Sammy for a close relation, shows up on the head of Nightmare Foxy, a twisted version of Phone Guy's avatar. Phone Guy is Henry, or at least Phone Guy used to be Henry. When Afton children grow up into larger, older forms, they take most of their memories and Remnant with them, leaving their earlier shells as still living images of who they used to be. Remnant drained versions of themselves dealing with memory loss after the transfer. Their Remnant is never destroyed, but it's now shared over more than one body. Phone Guy isn't Henry, but he used to be. Before he evolved into the powerful, confident, adult Cassette Man with Fredbear as an avatar and Fazbear Entertainment at his command, Henry was an insecure teenager, trying to prove to the others that he was more capable than they thought he was. That's why Foxy got his special snowflake stage apart from the other three robots, which either made him elite or a reclusive outcast, depending on how you want to look at it. And then there's another power that both Michael and Henry share. They can both mimic the voice of William Afton. PJ Haywood voices William in the interview at the start of Sister Location, and he also voices Michael in the final cutscene at the end of Sister Location's Custom Night. Two voices, identical at a base level, yet also possessing different attitudes and personalities that distinguish themselves from each other. The first is an English gentleman, the second is an uncertain, more American-sounding teen, and the third is a sinister vaudeville villain, if you also want to throw Scrapchat from the next game into the mix. Michael shares Remnant with his father, William, and by doing so, he also seems to have the power to mimic William's voice, a power of mimicry that Henry also possesses. As Cassette Man was able to call, the exact word used to describe what he did, the other family members to FNAF 6 in such a way that even William's own daughter Elizabeth believed to the end that her father William was the one who summoned them. This calling was probably sent over the Afton family network, something that all the androids and animatronics in the Afton family were patched into. Whoever our Pizzeria Simulator protagonist was, they kept working for Henry even though they heard his real voice over the cassette tapes. A voice with an American accent rather than an English one, suggesting that while old sport William probably grew up in England, Henry grew up in the United States after William had already migrated from England, which would make Henry younger than William, yet older than Michael. The perfect position for the idea that Henry was Michael's older brother. Back at the original restaurant in 1972, there were 4 animatronics for the 4 Afton children and grandchildren who existed at the time. Freddy for Michael, Bonnie for Sammy, Chica for Charlie, who she sadly never got to bond with, and Foxy for Henry, or whatever name he went with at the time, William Afton's eldest son. The music box song that keeps the puppet asleep is called My Grandfather's Clock, which is the perfect song to play for Charlie as William is her grandfather, which is probably why the puppet and William never attacked each other and saved them. Every discovery we make opens new doors and offers new possibilities to explore, and challenges us with new mysteries as well. What happened that caused a rift between Henry and the other members of the family? Why was Henry's daughter treated so terribly by Michael and the others at the birthday party? How did Michael's estranged older brother end up in charge of the family business and gain the ability to boss around even his father? And who killed Phone Guy even before FNAF 1 began? Took control of the restaurant, allowed Phone Guy's avatar to decay behind an out-of-order sign, even though Foxy was still able to run like a champion, and then recorded messages for William in Phone Guy's voice, only revealing themselves to have been a monster all along in the Night 5 call. There are still many questions to answer, but we will discover the answers in time, because FNAF is a Metroidvania, and we just found a lot of power-ups.